Aloha, and welcome to our 2022 Maui County candidate interviews. Today we have with us Netra Halperin, who's running for State Representative District 11, and that's for South Maui. Netra, welcome.
Thank you, Paul.
Just to start off, just to get our viewers to get to know you a little bit better, could you give an overview of your background, your civic engagement, your involvement with the legislation, and what's motivating you to run for this important office?
Thank you, Paul. So I started out as a psychologist. I have a master's in psychology. I worked for Maui Youth and Family Services, Aloha House, Women Helping Women. Then I became a small businesswoman. I ran a bed and breakfast. And then I worked at the state legislature for 2 sessions, 2009 and 2011, for Rep. Rita Cabanilla. And she was the chair of the housing committee. So I got very familiar with housing issues, homelessness issues, and different solutions. I've also been to Washington, D.C., where I learned about Congress and how that works and met a lot of Congress people. And then here on Maui, this morning, I was actually at a meeting with Tova Callender and John Estilla of the Sunshine Vetiver Solutions about some clean water solutions and monitoring, first of all, monitoring and then solutions for the leeward side, which is Lahaina and South Maui. So yeah, in environmental, I was in the committee on the status of women, and then I worked on the GMO moratorium. So I'm very concerned with environmental and social issues. I'm running for office because I was very disturbed by the mandates, the lockdowns. I didn't feel like that was an appropriate response, and it caused more problems than it solved. So that made me realize, okay, I really got to get in the government and make sure that medical freedom, bodily autonomy is respected.
Well, you mentioned involvement, Netra, in a lot of different areas. Out of those, what are you most passionate about? And, is that a big motivator for you to run for this office? Because it certainly it's a big commitment that you're making for this.
I mean, at this moment, because it's the most fresh, it's a new idea. The other issues have been issues on Maui for decades, actually. And then the bodily autonomy one, that is a new issue. And I just want to make sure that, yes, the lockdowns and mandates aren't happening right now, but I'm just wanting to make sure that digital ID, Chinese social credit system don't get implemented going forward. So I'm just really concerned about human rights. Previous to that, I was in DC working on, I did a documentary on Palestine. So that's not related to Maui, but just the issue of human rights and ensuring that both the government and corporations don't overstep their bounds, and that we remain free and dignified and healthy.
Great. Thank you for that. Next, we'll have Bruce Douglas.
Hi, Netra.
Hi, Bruce.
I'm going to dovetail on that last question. And for me, the real statesperson isn't just sitting back and voting on things that come forward, but what you champion,
Yes.
What you bills that you write, you see through, you see that it makes it all the way through and passes. So if you were elected for state rep, South Maui, what would be your 3 favorite bills that you would be interested in championing and bringing forth?
And that gets back to my 3-pronged platform, which is housing, affordable housing. Now, affordable housing on Maui, I mean, there is no affordable housing on Maui. That's something that doesn't exist. We need it, but it doesn't currently exist. Now, this has been a problem for many, many decades, and there's many larger issues that are out of our control. The inflation, possibly coming recession, That's out of our control. The fact that people are moving here from the mainland because of the pandemic, people can now work from home. So many IT people are coming here. They have a lot of money. That's raising all the prices. So those things aren't directly in our control. But the one thing that is completely in the government's control and actually is a problem wholly created by the government is the permitting process. My business right now is I help people get permits with Maui County. There was one individual who was responsible for doing the SMA permits. SMA is if your property is oceanside of either the Hana Highway or the Pi'ilani, that you have to get an extra permit. He said he had 80 permits in his queue the other day, and it was taking 6 months to do a simple permit. This was a permit that I was getting at the time for a kitchenette in a closet in an ohana above a garage that had been built 4 years ago. So it was not going to impact the ocean. And so it's just odd or ironic that the things that really will help the ocean aren't being done enough. And that's my second platform. And then the things that they're saying will protect the ocean are not even relevant. I 100% agree there needs to be estimate permits. So anyway, the overall point is we need to streamline the permitting process. If it takes 1.5 to 2 years to build a brand new house or renovate a house, then a homeowner has to pay a mortgage on 2 properties at once, where they're living now and where they want to move to. Many people can't afford that. A developer has to pay debt servicing on that same land or property that needs to be renovated for all that time. They're going to pass that on to the end user, to the homeowner. So the permitting process needs to be streamlined. You may say, oh, but you're not running for a county seat. How can you do that? Well, I have a plan which would be to offer to the counties, we'd have to do it to all the counties to get the other reps on board, of giving them money for increased staffing. But the caveat would be they would have to increase the speed. They would have to reduce the time so that more homes could be built, more affordable homes could be built, and that would at least take one element of the cost off. Let's see, that was the first one, housing, ocean. So I'm very committed to ocean water, ocean cleanliness and water quality and water stream flow. Like I said, I was just meeting with, let's see, the name of the group is Hui o Kauai Ola, and that is run by Tova Calendar. I also met with the Sunshine Vetiver Solutions. And then I also talk in my platform about using vermifiltration as a solution. That's using worms to process wastewater. And then this other group has a plan of using these plants that have these huge root bases, and they can absorb the nitrogen and the pharmaceuticals, and that will reduce if the county wastewater takes that project on. I mean, they have a pilot project, so they're open to the idea, but it needs funding. It needs to be a big project that could really clean the water and not inject it that ends up in the ocean. And then the other one, as I mentioned, is medical freedom. We as adults are responsible for our own health. We decide if our children need to take a certain medication, or whether in collaboration with trusted medical professionals that we trust, or whether we need to wear masks when grocery shopping. So those are decisions. These are our bodies. They don't belong to the government. They're not our parents. They don't need to decide that for us. So I'm very passionate about that also.
Okay. Thank you for those very thoughtful answers. And with that,
we'll have Ann
Paul?
next. Yep, Ann next.
Hi, Netra.
Hi.
I wanted to ask about campaign financing. Do you believe that we should limit campaign financing. I mean, it really costs a fortune to be able to run a campaign, and lots of people depend on big funders out there, which almost always comes with an expectation and an
Right.
agenda, right?
Quid pro quo, as they say.
Right, quid pro quo. I can never say that.
We know
Yeah,
what
that's right. That's right.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. And that pretty much I would say that the root of corruption in this country is campaign finance. And one time I was at a fundraiser when I was working in the legislature, and I was sitting at a table with a bunch of state representatives, and they all agreed if someone gave them $100, it would not affect their vote. If someone gave them $1,000, it would. And they said this. It wasn't on camera or anything, but that is absolutely reality. So right now we have partial campaign funding, which means that different seats. Okay, so for instance, for a House seat, you can, if you have to raise $1,500 and then it'll be matched, and you can raise up to $3,800 and then it'll be matched. So that's like a little more than $7,000. Well, you can't run a campaign on $7,000. I was just talking to a rep, and she said, yeah, you need about $50,000. So the partial is nice, but it's not going to do the trick. So there needs to be actual campaign finance where you can get enough, you can get as much as the person who ran before that won spent. For instance, Tina Wildberger, she raised $38,000. And so it would give the candidate, whoever got the campaign finance, that much money. And usually the way it works is, instead of, like, I had to get 15 signatures of Kihei registered voters, South Maui registered voters, in order to be on the ballot. But with this kind of campaign finance, usually they up it. So you got to get 50 or 100. So you have to really get a lot of signatures, but then you get enough money to actually run your campaign. So that would absolutely be the best. If you have a limit on what people can spend and it's too low, then that just doesn't, I don't know if that's the answer. Or what it could be is that you have the campaign finance, and then somebody who does not want to participate and they want to raise, like, for instance, Kyle Yamashita, he was like 138,000. Linda Coit was like really like 168,000. Now, granted, she has to go island to island. But anyway, if those people wanted to raise that money, they could, but then the other candidate could let the public know that they were not doing that. And that would give them credibility with the voters. So yes, campaign finance is a huge issue.
I think there's been some measure that there should be subsidized, that financing should be subsidized.
Yeah. Right now they get it from a fund. I don't know how aggressive they are in getting that fund, but I think it absolutely should get more funding. Yes. If I was on the finance committee, I would absolutely have a line item to increase the election campaign fund, because I think it would help, not just help the candidates personally, but it would help our democracy and have less people indebted to less corporations and developers, et cetera.
And you do hear candidates that come out and announce that I do not accept money from corporations, but then it does cost money to run a campaign.
It does. I mean, I put out a lot of money already, and, I'm getting the donations coming. I didn't even have my bank account set up because I was just like, slid in under the deadline. Uh-huh. So, it is a big deal. A big problem.
All right. Thank you.
We'll have Alan Lloyd next.
Hello, Netra. Aloha.
Aloha.
So I have a two-part question. My first part is, what do you think the state legal minimum wage in 2022 should be?
At least 20. At least 20. I mean, and people say, oh, that's hard on small business. But when I had a small business that had employees, like now I have a small business, but I don't need employees. But when I had one, this was in 2005, nobody would even talk to me unless I gave them $20 an hour. So nobody should be working for less than 20, and more is better, but not 15. That's still ridiculous. I mean, even with 20, you could maybe afford rent, but you couldn't eat or but drive a car. So if you want to live somewhere, eat, and drive a car, you need a lot more than that.
Okay, thank you. And the second part is, if you're elected, so there's a bill that passed that gets us to 18 by 2028. Would you, if you're elected, would you work to increase the timeline so that we get to 18 or even 20 faster than by 2028?
Absolutely. I can commit 100% that I would work on that with my colleagues. But yes, I 100% agree with that.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Next, we'll have Lucia Dene.
Aloha.
Hi, Lucian.
Aloha, Netra. Aloha, fellow panelists here. I would like to talk a little bit about the permitting process. So every year there are bills introduced in the legislature that suggest changes in the Land Use Commission. They suggest raising the amount of land that could be processed without Land Use Commission review to 50 acres instead of 15 where it is now. They suggest various automatic approval processes for various types of permits, like review by state historic, things like that. Could you explain, I know you want more efficiency in the permitting process, but could you explain how you would be likely to vote on these kinds of bills, because they come up every single year?
Right. And I agree with what I think your point is, which is individual home permits is one thing, but entire developments is a different one. And I agree with that. I think that full developments, which is going to affect traffic, it's going to be more of a built environment, so that affects flooding. It affects, the wastewater. It affects many different things. And so, yes, I do not agree I agree with, I think, the point you're making, which is that we shouldn't streamline the LUC in a lot. The historic thing, I do know a landowner who's had to have the historic thing 3 different times for the same property that she still hasn't done anything on. So it just needs to be more efficient that they do it correctly instead of having to keep repeating it. But yes, there does need to be oversight. This is just an individual landowner, but there does need to be serious oversight for large developments.
Well, what about individual developments that are, also need LUC approval because they're on a large lot that's 15 acres or more, like all of the lots in Launiapoco are 15 acres, 18 acres, whatever. And if they want to become rural, as many do, they need to go to the Land Use Commission. So it's not always just about developments. I just wonder, just in general.
A lot of the time is wait time. It's not like a reviewer is sitting there analyzing it. It's went from one desk, and then 3 months it goes to another desk, and then somebody sits there and actually processes it. So the wait times don't really help. There are waiting times. Sometimes you have to do a public notice, and then there is public comment period, and that's appropriate. But to just wait arbitrarily when nobody's actually doing any work on it doesn't really help anybody. So, and I did actually speak to one of the planners I use a lot today. I don't use them, they assign. And he said, yeah, the problem is staffing. And he said, it's hard to get people to work there because it's just a very stressful job. So again, I think if there was more staffing, then all of the same checks could be done, all of the same reviews, but without huge gaps of just nothing happening in between.
But you mentioned that the trade-off for the staffing would be that they have to speed up the process. Usually, the way that government has done this in every instance I've seen is just give a timeline and say, if it's not done in 60 days, 180 days, whatever it is, then it's automatically approved. So is that, would you support a bill that more or less said that?
And I've not seen that at Maui. Have you seen that on Maui, that if it's not approved in a certain amount of time, it's automatic? Because they always put dates on things, and then my clients start, getting all upset. Well, it said June 7th and it's now June 15th. Why? And I'm like, they do what they do because they do what they want to do. So
I'm talking about state agencies and state laws. Yeah, the
Okay.
Land Use Commission actually has a statutory, they have to review something within a certain amount of time of when it's, and the county council has an up or down time on 201Gs. If they don't review it in that time, then it's automatically approved. Yeah, this is done in county and in state. You may not be
Okay.
aware of it, but
Okay.
it's a common mechanism that
Right.
is used.
I mean, I think the times that they set for themselves are ridiculously long. And, when I look at a permit that I'm working on and I see, okay, September, like I submitted a couple permits applications the other day and it said September. And they said, oh, it's because we are backed up. So, they would have, but they don't, in my permits, the one I work on, they don't have, and yet if we don't meet our timeline, it'll be approved. It'd be great. My clients would love it, but that isn't those permits. So I think
Well, the question is, if a bill comes before you, that's the solution, are you going to go, well, this is good. It could happen faster because we'll give them staff, but here's the accountability. Is that sort of what you think would be acceptable?
Yeah, we give them the staff that they need, and then they have to lower the timelines. Yes.
And one more follow-up, and that is, on the other side of things, would you be supportive of sunset clauses for permits, EISs, things like that were given, 15, 20 years ago, and then developments just use them to move forward and say, well, it got approved 18 years ago, it's good still?
No, I think if it's that long ago, it needs to be redone.
All right, thank you.
Great, Netra. I'm going to ask the next question, and it has to do with our tourism industry. Certainly, we have been experiencing an issue with our carrying capacity here in Maui County. And also, we have an issue with infrastructure also to support that tourism. And yet, it seems like the infrastructure seems to be lacking, but yet there seems to be money going to a huge airport parking system for more car rentals. So what would you do on a state level to address this issue?
So tourism, yes, the money, there needs to be money that comes in for tourism that needs to be used for infrastructure, also environmental, because, like I said, a clean ocean is part and parcel of tourism. So that absolutely, and then that parking structure, I've looked at it and I think, what is that? I mean, it's this huge parking structure that I've never been in, and it doesn't even look that empty. So I agree with you, that was not a good use of funds. The money should be used for overall infrastructure for Maui County. And I think tourists should pay for it somehow. So there needs to be some add-on. I'm not sure the actual mechanism that would be the most useful. I mean, there's TAT, that's one of the mechanisms, some kind of tax on airlines. But yes, I agree that there needs to be a way to, because Maui is a place of very rich and a lot of just very struggling people. And that gap needs to be decreased. And so the people that come here on vacation obviously are paying a lot for their vacation, so they can pay a little more to add to keep our infrastructure on pace with the volume of tourists coming through.
Well, along that same line with infrastructure, with the right now the county has been looking at weaning off any type of chemicals that may be harmful to the environment or people. But yet, for our state roads, they are spraying Roundup, glyphosate throughout and at heavy rates. What would you do to address this issue of our health concerns here?
Well, I'm really glad you brought that up, Paul, because that's absolutely something I would do. I mean, I am anti-chemical, anti-poison. Like I said, I worked on the GMO moratorium. So I would, do what I could to get the Department of Transportation to stop doing that. I would, introduce a bill that they may not do that anymore. And, especially because the county's already backed off. It's the same island, it's roads that are just near each other. So yes, I would work on that. I if you want to work with me on that bill, Paul, please. But yes, that is a good idea.
Great, thank you. And next we'll have Bruce Douglas.
Hi, Netra. Bouncing off that previous question, sustainable agriculture. We're transitioning from a plantation era into the next era, but here in Maui, our plantation has been bought by another company, and we still don't have sustainable agriculture for the people and the Āina. If elected, what would you do to create agriculture that would be, for local consumption and increase sustainability in agriculture?
Well, I would sit down with the president of the Farmers Union, not the Farm Bureau, the Farmers Union. I know there's two different chapters here on Maui. And first of all, I'd listen to what their ideas are and how they believe that, especially organic agriculture can be supported. I know there's land trusts, that's one option, using dedicated state lands and dedicating state lands, that there could be community gardens or larger plots. For instance, my brother is an organic farmer and he wanted to move here and work as a project manager. And so he sent me to Mahiola and they said, oh, no, we don't want to do anything organic. So that is really unfortunate that Mahiola got all of that Central Valley land. It's better than sugarcane because at least they're not doing cane burning, but no, it's not sustainable and not creating enough agriculture to fill our produce needs here on Maui. Working with state lands and, more funding for small farmers. But the problem is buying land. I mean, you can't buy raw land in Maui and then pay the mortgage on agriculture. It's just not feasible. So it would have to be land that some state land that could be used for that. And then again, like I said, I'm not an expert on everything. So I would ask people, the Farmers Union, what they think is the best plan.
Great. Thank you for that thoughtful answer.
Okay, and we'll have Ann next.
Hi, Netra. So I have
Hi.
a question about our aging cesspools as one of the most aging infrastructures we have, which contribute to ocean pollution. And so we've been in violation of the Safe Drinking Water Act and EPA federal rules and regulations since 2010. And I wonder, on a state level, what can you do to help convert cesspools to septic?
Well, actually, a better solution is vermifiltration. And Dr. Lauren Pang, the director of health of Maui County, he's working on a project. He's got several pilot properties that are doing vermifiltration. And so what you do is you have a tank with worms, and the worms, they increase and decrease their population based on the nutrient source, sewage. And the system costs for a home $1,000. A septic tank costs around $30,000. It's not sustainable. It has to be pumped out every 6 months or a year and then taken and put in the waste treatment. So you're not actually resolving the problem. You're just making sure that it doesn't just leach from that property. So programs like that, the vermifiltration, and also the vetiver using plants. So nature had this all planned out. Nature does not create anything that isn't a circle. Everything in nature is a circle, and it takes care of itself. Everything that humans have done, most things anyway, are just a line, and then it gets to the end of the line, and there's just like, oh, I don't know what to do with that. So I'm all for using nature, plants, animals, to help us with our waste processing. That'll be sustainable, it'll get it cleaner, and it'll resolve things, and it's cheaper for the homeowner. So most homeowners could fork over $1,000. $30,000, not so many. So yes, I think that's the best solution.
Are you saying that you can keep your cesspool and or do you have to convert it to a vermiculture? Or
you get rid of the cesspool.
Treat it.
Yeah. It's the swap. You get rid of the cesspool and you do the vermifiltration instead.
I'm very unfamiliar with that, so thank you. Has it ever been implemented anywhere? Is it?
Yeah. There's the project that Dr. Pang's working on. He's working with the UH Manoa, and then there are. Let's see. I think it's in India. They are doing it, and then also. The vermifiltration in Haiti. Also, there's a program for that. So, it's up and coming. I mean, it's one of those things that's up and coming that's probably been used for thousands of years. But anyway, yes, and the director of health is working on a pilot project. So once his project is done, then it can be it'll be permitted for Maui County residents. And they don't have to get septic tanks anymore, and they can get rid of their cesspools.
So that would have to probably go through an approval process with the EPA.
And the Department of Health, I think, Pang is with the Department of Health, so that's where he's working. But yeah,
interesting.
Great.
All right.
Okay. Thank you. And Alan Lloyd will be next. Alan, you're on mute. You need to unmute, Alan.
There.
Okay.
I unmute and somebody mutes me. It's fun. Okay, so Netra, as you know, rents are increasing on Maui substantially. There was just a report 2 days ago that Lahaina Crossroads Apartments, all of the tenants of the 20 units are being evicted, and the new owner is going to double the rents. So what are your thoughts about, and this is a two-part question. The first part is residential rent control.
I believe in rent control. I absolutely think. Now, I mean, it's like anything. It's not the final solution, but because, like I mentioned in the beginning, the reason for the increase in rent, a lot of those forces are national and in the market, and that they're out of our control. So yes, I definitely believe in rent control, and that would include at purchase. That would be, and then also on a related issue is affordable purchase housing, that people could buy property, buy homes, but that needs to remain affordable in perpetuity, because there's no reason that somebody should buy as an affordable unit and then be able to sell at market as an investment. So basically, it would be taking home ownership out of investing. So if you want to invest in a home to make money, then keep on with the market. If you want to buy a home so that you have the pride of home ownership, the security of home ownership, then land trusts are definitely the way to go. But back to your rental question, yes, I believe in rent control.
Okay. And what about commercial rent control for those small businesses where rent is either their top cost or their second cost, and because rents are increasing for small businesses, and especially after the pandemic, rents have been increasing. Commercial rent control.
Oh, commercial rent control. Yeah, I agree. The same thing. Maybe, I haven't done commercial renting myself, so maybe it could be tied to the profits because those are going to be more stable. They aren't going up, exponentially like the price of land is. So yes, I agree. I know in Paia Town, Bruce, you're I'm sure familiar with that. The price of rents, have they gone up exponentially recently? Bruce? Oh, he's on mute. Anyway,
Yes.
Yes, I just say that because he and his wife own a business right there on Baldwin Avenue. And yes, I agree. Small business, I'm a big supporter of small business. And, the lockdowns hurt them, the mask mandates hurt them. And so anything we can do to support small business, because that creates a sustainable economy. Big boxes have their place in life, but we got to keep the small businesses going and support them in any way possible. So yes, commercial rent control for small businesses, especially.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Great. Next, we'll have Lucienne.
Hi, I have a question about airport expansion, and this is something that's been on the state agenda for quite some time, expanding Kahului Airport, and I think Kauai as well, Lihue Airport. And the state legislature supplies funding for these CIP projects. So as a Maui representative, if you saw a funding project that had a bunch of money for this and a bunch of money for that, would you have a tendency to just support everything that brings funding to Maui, or would you or your staff review projects to see if they're needed? How would you consider this? Because right now, most of our delegation, it's like their job is to bring money here. So how would you look at these types of CIP proposals that come down often from the governor and the agencies?
Well, I follow the triple bottom line analysis. So that how does it affect the economy? How does it affect the people? And how does it affect the environment? So I would use that rubric on all decisions. And so, no, I'm not a party line person. I look at each bill, each issue individually and directly. And yes, I would either myself or have a staff help me with that, do that and analyze what are all the impacts that it would have before just voting for it. So yes, money is good, but the money doesn't always go to the right places anyway. And that's another story. But no, not just, oh, it brings money and let's do it. No, I would analyze it.
And mostly the analysis that's available is usually pretty favorable. That's how these projects get this far. So how would you get additional information if the primary information source was, shall we say, geared towards the selling points of the project?
Of course. I would work a lot with community organizations. Like I spoke before about environmental organizations, I would seek out organizations that are like Maui Tomorrow. I know You might even be a member of them. But anyway, I know that's their kind of mission, is to make sure that Maui doesn't become another Oahu, or like how are the policies that we're implementing now affect us going forward. So, obviously I would have limited staff, and then I would connect with local community organizations who care about these issues and see what they're saying and take that data into my analysis also.
Okay, so because this issue, for instance, the airport has always been a safety issue. So it's not about the financing. It's like, we need this for safety. And that's how it's been presented.
Well, the government says a lot of things about safety that aren't true. So in that particular case, then I would speak to, aeronautical groups, people that experts in airport and airline safety, and see, is that true? Is it true? Because I don't believe anything, especially the government says point blank. I would study it. So I would talk to aeronautical people, airport safety, airline safety, flight safety people, and check if that's true before just believing it.
All right, thank you. And just for the record, so you would have been happy if the governor just asked people to voluntarily wear masks or not coming to Hawaii during the height of the pandemic, and that we didn't curtail any tourism and just had everybody from everywhere come in when we have limited hospitals? Is that what you think would have worked?
Well, all of the studies that are coming out now based on data, because we have data, show that masks don't actually stop the spread of anything. So I wouldn't mandate an action that isn't effective. The same thing, like I just said, I would research all of the information. Wouldn't just believe what the CDC said. I would talk to other scientists and researchers and look into it. And so I do not think, the masks do not stop the spread of anything. So I would not force people to do something that didn't work. That's it lowers credibility of the government. It causes depression, et cetera. So no, I would not have made it mandatory. If people want to do whatever, again, it's our bodies. So if people want to wear masks because they believe that it will keep them safer, go for it. But it doesn't stop anybody else from getting anything, and it doesn't stop the spread of anything. So I would not force people to do things like that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Netra, I'm going to ask the next question. And you're coming in as a Republican in a very strong Democratic state. And yet, when you look at getting legislation passed, it's about relationships and about the way that you connect with other people. How do you feel that being a Republican, when you're surrounded by these Democrats and a lot of them corporate Democrats, how would you address that relationship and to get things so that your office, you'd be able to actually pass legislation that would make a difference?
Absolutely. Excellent question. I think because of everything I was just discussing, it is just a fact. Many, many, many Republicans are running. This is the most Republicans that have ever run in the state of Hawaii's history. I think it's like 105. It's a lot. Now, a lot of them are newbies and won't necessarily get elected. And again, somebody else was saying, even as a progressive, it's difficult when you have a bunch of corporate Democrats because they still don't have the same viewpoint. And regarding relationships, I was at the Ag Fest, and several reps that have been there forever came up to me and said, "Oh, hi, Netra. Hi, Netra." I didn't come up to them. So they know me. I do have relationships with many reps because I worked there for 2 sessions. And I do actually believe that the reps will look at the merits of the bill. And as you can hear, many of my platforms are similar to progressive Democrats, not even corporate Democrats. So, here's Republican on one side, then there's the corporate Democrats, and then there's the progressive Democrats. I'm more like the progressive Democrats. And so I believe that, I'm a people person and reach out to people, very outgoing. And so that would be something I would do is, connect with like-minded people, or even like-minded on a issue. Somebody might be in disagreement about many issues, but on the particular, like the minimum wage, that, the Republicans aren't going to go for that necessarily, but I don't care. I'm not there to make anybody happy. I'm there to put forward the legislation that I think my constituents and the state of Hawaii would benefit from. So yeah, I would just collaborate with whoever. I mean, you have to get co-sponsors. Whenever you introduce a bill, you have to get co-sponsors. And I would find the people that I learned or knew supported that issue.
Great. Thank you for that. And Bruce, you'll be the last question.
So Netra, one of the big issues for Maui right now is affordable housing, which has gone sky high, where people who live here can't afford housing. Do you have any good solutions on the state level on how the state could help the affordable housing issue in Maui and across the state?
Okay, so I talked about the reducing the permitting process so that more homes could be built. So that's part of the problem, is a low inventory. So that problem existed before all these recent problems. But yeah, so making it easier, quicker, with the same oversight, but just, condensed together with all the waiting times in between. So that would help. Community land trusts actually would help. And affordable housing that would be available in perpetuity. Rent control would help a lot. See, the problem with rent control is if you enacted it today compared to 2 years ago, they would still be, obscenely high. So at least, but still we need to do it. So you got to have a multifaceted approach, because the problems are coming from many different aspects of the economy and Maui's life and the national colony. I mean, nationally, real estate prices are going up. And, when real estate prices go up, rental prices go up, because if somebody buys a property, they're not going to rent it out for any less than they pay their mortgage. And so, so a multi-pronged approach, including the things I mentioned already.
And to dovetail on that one, the outrageous prices have led to homelessness, houselessness, unsheltered people, not only in Maui, but across the state. What would be your solution for the unsheltered?
Okay, so when I was working for Rep. Rita Cabanilla, there was a program called Housing First. And what it is that homeless people, all the wraparound services that they're currently getting, when you add them up, it costs more money than just giving them an apartment. And so there was $8 million that was raised for a apartment building in Chinatown, which has a very bad homeless problems. The streets smell bad. It's just a very bad problem. And with the Housing First program, the person does not have to be clean and sober before getting into the housing. The idea being that many people, the only requirement is you have to allow a visit from a social worker like once a week. And I was a social worker. We're nice people. It's not a problem. So, but you don't have to be clean and sober. Now, many people, once they get housing, their life stables out. They, have a secure, safe place to be. They've got food. They've got visitors. They can get off the drugs and alcohol, because they were self-medicating because of the pain, the depression, the despair of living on the street. So Housing First is one good solution for homelessness. In my neighborhood in Kihei, there's a couple different people that wander Kihei. And some of them I know for a fact are mentally ill. One of them actually is a friend of the son of a friend of mine, and he has schizophrenia. So it would be nice if, and then also to set up mental, like remember when Reagan was president and he shut down all of these mental health facilities and homelessness like not blossomed or bloomed, got huge in the country. Well, I would set up through the state, or not set up, but look to the people who are in that business and help fund mental health housing, because there is people that really do have mental health. Now that's been way before, the shutdowns, the lockdowns, the inflation. So that's a different type of homelessness, but that for them. And then all the other possibilities, subsidized rental. I know there was some subsidized rental that came in from the feds as part of the CARES Act. I'm not sure if it all got properly dispersed. I heard that it didn't, and I heard that it did. So, and also that's the other thing, to when possible, access federal funds. Sometimes there's federal funds that nobody applies for or makes the effort to qualify for, and that those could be used very well. So everything possible to, provide housing for both the people that are economically needing it and then the mental ill people also.
Okay, thank you for that answer.
Netra, we've covered a lot of ground, and I just want to know if there's anything that you feel passionate about that we haven't covered, or any other concluding remarks that you'd like to make for our audience.
I think I asked you. I talked about everything that I want to. I just think it's a really exciting time in our country, in our world, in our government, because I think a lot of kind of dead wood, a lot of old things that have been decades long are being challenged. And so I think citizens have woken up and they're aware of, that what's going on, and people are willing to look beyond just their life and to get civically engaged in ensuring that we have a government that is responsive, respectful. And that's the other thing, respect of, and that ties back into the medical freedom. To me, it's respect of the people, to allow them to make their own medical choices. So that's why I think this is an exciting time, and I'm really excited and happy to be running.
Great. Thank you. So this is Netra Halperin, who's running for State Representative House number 11, District 11. And again, that's South Maui. And for those of you who are on Facebook Live, you can catch all of our interviews at MauiPonoNetwork.org and also on Akaku, Channel 54. Thank you for watching. Mahalo.
Thank you.